Hello, welcome back to another episode of AI, the podcast, the show where we try to make sense of this rapidly changing technological landscape that we find ourselves in, kind of our own private data center of sorts, as we chart the changing world of artificial intelligence. I'm one of your hosts, David Maples, and as always, I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Virginia Huling.
Hey, David. Thanks. It's good to be back. It's been a couple of weeks since we've gotten to do this. So you've been traveling around talking to people, huh?
Yeah, I've given a couple of talks on AI. I gave one on AI and cybersecurity a couple weeks ago. And then last week, I just got back from a talk in Illinois where I was talking about moving from AI efficiency to opportunity for small and medium businesses. And it's always illuminating to get out there and see how people are actually using this or trying to use this in their daily lives and in their businesses. We're actually going to make a version of that available online for everyone to look at. It's going to be we'll attach it to AI the podcast. The other one that I gave for efficiency and opportunity for small and medium business owners, we're going to make a version of that for the Buck Stops Here podcast. That particular talk didn't really lend itself. It was more of a Q&A with the audience. We had a live demo that we attempted to do. And so what we're going to try to do there, by the way, in case you didn't read the subtext there, never try to do a live technology demo. Even the great Steve Jobs had trouble pulling those off. And something always happens. And this time it was Microsoft, the blue screen of death in the middle of a demo. But I'm going to make a version of that talk based on the feedback we got from the audience. And I'll make a version of that we can tag here on AI, the podcast, and it'll be part of one of our episodes and the Buck Stops Here. We'll have that up in a couple of weeks. The Buck Stops Here is a podcast, a companion podcast that I run that's really business information for, it's everything I've learned from consulting with Fortune 500 companies over the past 20 years. And we always joke it's $20,000 of business advice at a little bit less than an hour. It's a business podcast with a technology bent, and we're just finishing up a sequence of 9 or 10 parts that deal with artificial intelligence in small and medium businesses. So that's what that podcast is. That's another podcast that I helm. So go check it out online and subscribe. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. You can also find it at thebuckstopsherepodcast.com. Now back to AI, the podcast.
All right. Well, thanks, David. We've got a really big show today. There have been the past few weeks while you've been traveling around have been, kind of quiet, but progress here and there. There's a lot of questions and chatter around data centers and next generation models and trying to incorporate AI into these large enterprise systems. So I'm actually really excited about today's show. We're looking at 5 major stories that when you zoom out a little bit, they perfectly illustrate kind of the collision between artificial intelligence, human nature, and the economy. And I think those are 3 kind of areas that are really starting to have this public dialogue and kind of clashing interactions within. So it's interesting. And while our goal is always to connect the dots for business owners and individuals, for the headlines to kind of line up like this in such close proximity is kind of unusual. The past couple weeks, the past several weeks actually, a lot of the news pieces that come out, they're operating in vastly different sectors, and we're trying to pull all together. But this past week, we've had a series of kind of cascading events. It's really, I think you guys as an audience, it'll be interesting to see the almost cause and effect relationship that they have on each other.
I do want to say, I want to interrupt what we're doing right now for kind of a breaking story. So this is our story 6. So it just came down, the New York Times just broke it, that Donald Trump has signed an executive order dealing with artificial intelligence. We talked about this on the show a little bit over a month ago, I believe. We talked about that it might happen. And since then, it's been a will he, won't he, will it happen, will it, won't happen. So now we kind of have the details on it right now. It looks like they also brought in David Sachs. He was the former AI czar for the White House, and he has that hotline between Silicon Valley and the White House. He apparently finally blessed this thing. He basically apparently tried to stop the last one. So the way it worked before, listeners, is that the executive order would have been a 90-day kind of moratorium before things got released to the public, so that the White House and the Trump administration could review them for cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities. It looks like the newer version, actually the version that actually was signed by Donald Trump today, gives a 30-day moratorium basically allowing them 30 days to review it. And I think they're trying to strike the balance with they don't want to lose the competitive edge because this is moving so quickly. And I think one of the big concerns for Silicon Valley was a 90-day. Think about if they had to wait 90 days to release any new AI
Oh, that's
model right
forever.
now. Yeah, it's basically forever right now. So that actually did not, they actually looks like they did not do that. And it looks like it is a voluntary
So,
request to give them 30 days. This is really surprising because before, when this was being talked about and bandied about at the White House, all of the tech executives were going to be at the White House for a photo op. This is really kind of different for the White House to kind of do this without having it signed up with a photo op with it at the same time. I don't know exactly what that means, but I do think it means it's kind of I don't know how well reasoned and thought out it is, but it looks like they felt
okay.
compelled to act and they did that.
So I'm sure we're all going to get a lot more information around this, but so clarify something for me. If they signed an executive order saying that the government will review new models as they are submitted to them by AI companies like Anthropic or ChatGPT, right? But
Yeah,
it's
Anthropic
totally
and OpenAI, yes.
but okay, yeah, but it's totally voluntary and that's it. It's just totally voluntary.
Yeah, I mean, executive orders are kind of weird anyway. They're not being done by the legislative branch. They have the force of law, but it actually, the
I,
language in it is that it is voluntary.
So if it's voluntary, are we expecting these companies to go along with this? Does this create some kind of currency for these companies? Like, oh, I'll do the moratorium and you help me do a favor and get stuff passed.
I mean, yeah, the answer to both those questions is yes. If I'm one
Dang, I
of
was
these
hoping I
AI
was kind of wrong
companies,
on that.
well, think about it. We have the highest negatives. The only thing that has a higher negative on AI right now, I mean, they have a lower approval rating than just about anything else in the economy.
Okay, but
So,
what's the point?
okay,
If it's totally voluntary, what's the point? Are Anthropic and OpenAI, are they going to do this? Is Grok going to
yes,
do this?
they absolutely are going to do it.
Okay,
Um,
because it helps keep things going.
well, I think it helps keep things going. Plus, you get to have a press opportunity where you can say, "Hey, we're working with the White House." Plus, remember, all of this, like you said, that it just came out that what's her name,
Aaron Brockovich.
Aaron Brockovich, is making a tracking map
Okay,
online for data
yep,
centers.
I'm gonna pause this because I want to talk about that in depth more this coming week, and
Okay,
it's going to derail everything we're about to jump into.
okay, we will do that. But right now, the negatives on AI are really, really, really big, and so I think because we have a lot of competing narratives, I believe my thought on it is that if you're an AI company right now, you really want to have something showing that you're on the side of the people. And if you don't cooperate with this executive order, which is supposedly going to give the government oversight of, hey, if it's got major cybersecurity problems, things like that, we want to review them
Who's
first before we
reviewing
release
this?
them. The Trump
Yeah, but
administration.
who? But who?
What? I don't know. Someone at the Trump
What
administration.
what smart people do they have working in this that aren't already working in AI with another
I
private
really
firm?
don't know.
Okay,
The re- the reality of it is that someone up there in I don't know who the current AI czar.
do you think they're going to use Mythos to try and find security holes?
I think yes, and I don't
So
know
they're
who
going to
the
use
current.
Anthropic to try. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know who's currently in charge of it right now because I know David Sachs stepped down from the AI czar position in like March, I think.
Mhm.
So I don't know who's going to be, but some smart people in the federal government supposedly are going to be looking at this. But right now, if I'm an AI company and I have these real headwinds, look, we'll talk about the IPOs and everything else that are coming down the pike, but if I want all these things to happen, and by the way, those are only largely going to be successful, I think, if you have retail investors who want to get a piece of the action. So I think from my standpoint is that way you can look like you're on the side of the people that you think that it's like, oh, we're admitting to some regulation, and then you can at
Yeah.
least you can probably make that a public relations piece where you can say, hey, I am thinking about this, we're trying to be thoughtful about this, and we're trying to do this in a responsible way. Whereas before, I mean, it's just been whoever could get there first with the most would win.
Okay.
So that's what I
We'll
think on it.
we'll
It's
see how this
interesting.
plays out. There's I mean, it's some big headlines, which is odd, which is kind of odd because when you told me about this breaking story, I went to go look for it and it was kind of buried under a whole lot of other things. It didn't get a whole lot of headline space. So we'll we'll see the effectiveness of this and what kind of the strategy and the plan is as they roll it out. I'm interested to keep on top of this one.
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I also always look at, with the current administration, if this is now a headline, what else are they trying to not have us pay attention to at that point in time?
Right.
I think it's part of it.
Well,
So
and it's interesting you talked about, the coming wave of IPOs and whatnot, because that's actually our first article for this week. Prior to the government stepping in and declaring that they're going to get involved in this. I think the market right now overall is like foaming at the mouth to have AI investment opportunities. So I don't know that anybody's really going to be fighting or arguing this one. But our first article for this week's episode, it's talking about the money and the market. And in this article dated June 1st, on Reuters, that was yesterday, our AI giant Anthropic has confidentially filed for a U.S. initial public offering. And they edged out ahead of OpenAI, their current rival, in the race to meet those public markets. There was a lot of speculation on the money markets, on the prediction markets, that OpenAI was going to be the first to jump into it, but Anthropic is making the first moves. Known for their Claude models, Claude Code, Anthropic last raised funds at a staggering $965 billion valuation, and this filing sets up a massive test of whether or not public investor appetite is going to match these expectations and these private valuations. There is so much money being thrown at these things. It's wild.
if they write an epitaph for OpenAI, it would be dated June 1st, 2026. I think the fact that Anthropic is going to get to market first with this. Now, but I could be wrong. I think there's going to be appetite for both. I was kind of worried that Anthropic would get there second. And so there's going to be less appetite probably for the second follower in the market. The fact that OpenAI is targeting, almost $1 trillion valuation with, I think it's like 965 billion or whatever with this IPO filing. I think it's going to take a lot of wind out of OpenAI sales. And I think this is really where Anthropic, like if you'd bet, like I'd wish I'd had money on a poly market. I mean, I would have put major money on the fact that OpenAI would beat them to the market first, and they didn't. So I think it's going to be very interesting.
They are definitely downplaying that as a strategic move. They've already said that they will go public when the time is right. So this doesn't seem to be ruffling any of those feathers, at least on the surface.
Wait, you said that OpenAI said they're going to go to market when the timing's right? Yeah,
Yes.
if I had lost the race to the market, I'd be like, it's just an honor to be nominated.
Well,
I didn't care about
we'll
winning
see.
anyway.
But see, you're talking about winners and losers in that grand realm. I want to know, what does this kind of impact have downriver on the rest of us? We've already heard the past couple weeks, the wonderful quote Sam Altman gave about metering intelligence from AI like it's a utility. So, the chatter's already all over the place talking about how they're going to be increasing pricing models and access to things. So is this the beginning of that new method of reaching AI, utilizing AI?
Oh, yeah, we definitely are going to see the end of the AI subsidies. So in this talk I gave to small and medium business owners, by the way, stay tuned for when that episode drops. So like if you subscribe to the show, we'll let you know about that. But basically, one of the things about it is a positive return on investment is what everybody wants to know. And as the subsidies get removed, that question is going to be a lot harder, even for small and medium business companies. In the talk I gave last week, 68% of small and medium business owners, think of any company like under 50 million in revenues a year, probably small and medium business owners. Some people put that at 200 million. But the reality of it is those companies, it seems like somewhere between 1% and 5% are actually getting a positive return on investment in their current AI software stack. And I think this is partly because a lot of people are implementing these things incorrectly. And we've seen like OpenAI and Anthropic over the past 2 weeks, something we missed in previous weeks. They both have announced their own like integration integrators. They're going to have their own people coming out there helping business try to get positive return on investment. This is with the current pricing paradigm. So now, if only 1% to 5% are getting positive return on investment, what's that going to look like, when the prices go up by a factor of 5 or 10? And I think there's several different things that are available there without derailing the pod right now. I think that's going to be a big question over what that looks like. I think it's very important for small and medium business owners I do this for a living, so full disclosure. I think it's very important to get somebody like me or someone who's like a peer of mine into your business because you are too close to it. You do not know how to implement it. You do not know how to measure it. And you're not sure how to get a positive return on investment. Where you should be putting AI in in your business is where you get the maximum return on investment. And right now, when I see small and medium business owners, they think it's magic and they're trying to have it do everything. Imagine if, like, in Fantasia, the Disney movie where they have, like, the brooms clean the building or whatever it is. Just my point about it is that you want to make sure that you're doing something faster and better than the humans can do. And a lot of times that's not true.
I do want to say this, so it's not just David saying, like, get somebody like me and to help with some of this. What I have seen from the outside of that is it's not just get somebody in here that knows more about AI than I do. It's about the things that you don't even think that to know to ask about, like privacy, like access to models. Is your enterprise business locked into one model so that you are subject to their pricing whims, or is your business model agnostic? I've heard David talk about that for years now at this point. And I think we're only now getting to a point where the reality is kind of hitting the road with that. So as a business owner, you're not only looking at how do I incorporate the models into my business, but how do I keep it safe? How do I keep people in the loop? How do I make sure that my intellectual property isn't leaking out the sides because somebody is just using their own private version of ChatGPT that they use to get information on how to have better dates, as well as my marketing materials. So there's a lot of layers to this stuff, and we are only now as human beings just kind of getting to play with it in a way that's going to have like big impacts on our businesses that we're building and redeveloping. To move into our next article, while you're thinking about that, the obvious question is, how many of my people is this going to replace? How much of myself can I replace with this technology? Everybody wants that. Everybody's looking for that time back. But as we run ahead, we're starting to see some of the labor markets themselves get caught up.
I think that's an excellent segue to our next article. In an article entitled, "Is AI Replacing Tech Workers or Providing an Excuse for Job Cuts?" published by the New York Times yesterday, June 1st. Basically, the summary of the article is that recent waves of tech industry job cuts are being blamed on AI replacing workers. But many economists and former employees argue that this is AI washing. It's a smokescreen. AI is definitely changing workflows. Analysts note that companies are using the AI narrative to appease Wall Street, cover up pandemic era overhiring, and they're trying to patch over management mistakes and artificially inflate record profits. So basically, what this article is suggesting is that we should be overall very skeptical about the recent tech layoffs and that are being blamed on AI. The question is this really the reason they're doing the layoffs? And by the way, we have seen record profits. It's a weird thing. Like, it's making Wall Street happy, but it's really ticking off the humans. You have literally posted some of your highest profits ever in history. And yet you're turning around at the same time and being like, oh, we're laying off 10,000 here, 8,000 there. Since in the past 5 months, there have been about 100,000 layoffs in the tech sector in particular that have been pointed at due to AI. And the question is that really what's happening or not? What are your thoughts, Jay?
I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of people to take advantage of, cleaning up some things that they maybe thought they should have moved on a couple of years ago and didn't. I think AI is going to catch the fault for a lot of these things. I don't necessarily think it's the case. I'm not seeing it integrated enough into enterprise level for it to hit like this just yet. The potential is certainly there, but I don't know. I don't buy it.
There's a challenge here. So Wall Street definitely likes you laying off a big headcount number.
But,
think about the narrative. Like, if I'm trying to make the number go up and I'm trying to increase my stock value, right?
Sure.
If I have record profits and I'm saying, hey, and by the way, we're so profitable, we think AI is going to help us be even more profitable, and we can lay off 10,000 people at the same time. That's a big sales pitch for Wall Street.
Yeah. At the same time, I hear, people in the government sector talking about jobs reports. So there is a lot of pressure to keep unemployment very, very low. I think there's a lot of competing stories that are going to be out around this, competing narratives to try and control the public. My take on this, very simple, are reaching a point where It's a lot harder for people to just take what you're saying at face value. I think transparency is going to be the word of 2026. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more push for that sort of thing. And maybe we'll see ripples in articles like this.
I'm going to counter your argument and say that the word of 2026 will be opaqueness. I think it's going to be the opposite of transparency. It's going to be under the guise of being transparent while being actively opaque, not letting people see what you're really doing. Kind of a Wizard of the Oz.
Dark take, David. You're going police state when you go there.
I'm not going police state. I'm not saying that's the way we should want these things to end up, but I think it's the world we're living in. If you see kind of what Google did with their Google I/O the past couple of weeks, Google has said they're going to kill the internet. Like they're going to said everyone will come to the internet through us. It's the only way to get there. And we're going to kill the way search and everything else has worked. We're going to literally wholesale take everything off the internet and not pay people for it. And everyone is going to pay us an admission fee for playing. I think that's where we're at. Rand Fish, formerly of Moz, he kind of called Google last week. He said they're actively an evil company now. So I don't know how people feel about this, but I think we're seeing this happen in broad daylight and nobody's getting together to stop it. What I do want to say is that as I've talked to business owners and I'm helping people provide integrations, I think replacing humans with AI is a really dumb idea. Let me repeat that. Replacing humans with AI is really stupid. Replacing everything a human does right now is almost impossible with any AI. Klarna is probably the biggest cautionary tale. They went from 5,000 customer service agents. They said, we're going to replace all of our customer service agents with AI. And a few months later, they're like, oh no, we're going to have to rehire these because you know what people hate? Talking to an AI robot. So what I think is really happening here is we're going to see a massive, I think, a pushback on here. We're going to see some retrenchment on this. I do want to say the takeaway from this is that it's a productivity enhancer. You should be replacing tasks in your business, not jobs. Find things that the AI is good at and then free your people up to do the cognitive labor that's important, because humans are what this really should all be about at the end of the day. How does this work? And then there's a question about how much the AI is actually going to cost you. So I think cutting your core staff too deeply will damage your operational capabilities in the long run, and the true value still relies on human talent. That being said, the thing I want to toss this over to you, Jenny, is training the future of the workforce. What does that look like in a world where human talent's currently...
Good grief. Okay. I'm so excited that I get to tackle this one. This is an article in the New York Times yesterday. The article is entitled, "A University System Went All In on AI. Now it's tearing itself apart." It's a very dramatic title, but it was dated yesterday, June 1st in the New York Times. So California's public universities, specifically San Jose State, they've gone all in on becoming AI-powered campuses. They're integrating AI libraries. They're integrating AI agents for commencement. However, against the backdrop of this system-wide financial crisis, this rushed integration is tearing the campuses apart. One of the challenges is that the public universities have spent $16.9 million on AI during this financial crisis. And it's wreaking all kinds of havoc for the system itself, for the campuses themselves. It's leaving anxious faculty and confused students struggling to understand what training for the AI economy actually means. And I can't help but feel a touch of nostalgia for an article like this. Let me tell you guys a little story. I was an art major, specifically in the late 90s, early 2000s. There was like all kinds of people trying to get in to make video games. Everybody wanted to work in CGI. Everybody wanted to do modeling or develop game systems or, build the models for the games. It was huge. I wanted to be an animator. I got into it as well. And it was glorious. It was like everywhere. The challenge when you go back and you kind of break that whole period of time down a little bit is that the universities were so desperate to get that money from those students and have those programs that they just cobbled things together. There was, for a lot of universities, there was not really an animation program or a, CGI video game development program. Those came later. They were developed really well about 5 or 10 years after the fact, once people in the industry started re-engaging with the university institutions to pour that knowledge into it. The early 2000s were rough. y'all. There was a lot of money spent from students trying to get into this educational system to learn these cutting edge technologies so that they could jump out and get a job. And really, a lot of it was making sure that your fundamentals were good, making sure you had a really solid portfolio, standing out from everybody else around you that was trying to do the same thing, and then relentlessly pursuing those job openings because they were few and far between. You had to get to know people in the industry. Tale as old as time. It's how people have been hired for since the beginning of time. And I kind of feel like this is version 2.0 of that. There's a lot of opportunity, as everybody says. Like, look, just look outside in the financial markets. People are going bananas trying to get their money into AI so that people can make money off of it. Humans are no different. We've been hearing about the coming job layoffs for about a year, 2 years now. It's started to seep into the public domain. People are concerned about what the future looks like. And now here are our institutions trying to capitalize on that. Now, there are a lot of people that are going to take one side of the camp versus the other. Either college is great or college is terrible for you. I'm not here to have that discussion. I think it's unique to individuals and there's pros and cons on both sides, and it depends on what you want to do and who you are. But what I am going to say is that before you sign yourself up to take $40,000 out in loans for, a certificate course or 2 years in an AI study program, you might want to really realize that this is an emerging technology and ain't nobody ready to teach this stuff to anyone. We are all kind of learning out here on the fly. So just, take a look at the course if you want to take it. That's cool, but look at it with a grain of salt and seriously ask yourself if this is something that you can learn on your own or with people out in the industry or hobbyists and learn the things that you're going to be paying an institution to teach you. That was a little bit of a soapbox, a little unintentional, but the point's the same. The San Jose State is they're dealing with massive public relations issues. They have student confusion, they have faculty problems with it, and all on the backdrop of we've spent a ton of money on this and there really isn't a whole lot to show for it. So buyer beware.
So I do want to say a couple things there, right? They gave a sweetheart deal to OpenAI, I think, to put it in their systems. I remember hearing about this in the fall. They're saying that the first class of what they're calling AI natives just graduated from college. In the fall of 2022 is when OpenAI released the original version of ChatGPT. And some of the numbers coming out are staggering. According to Yale University, 91% of the class of 2026 used AI for schoolwork. Yet the crazy part about it, there's two things here I want to point out. Number one, this is the class of these Gen Z kids who are actively booing people at commencement. Eric Smith, the lady at the University of Central Florida, they're booing people publicly. They hate AI in a lot of ways. And we're also seeing some massive real concerns on cognitive labor. Kids are actually learning, et cetera. And this is nothing against the kids, but this is what they have been given these tools. And there's a new College Board research study that came out a few months ago. And I think there was widespread concern among like 90% of faculty that it lowered cognitive critical thinking skills, the ability to produce creative work, originality, and deep engagement with subject material. And I know that we've told all these students, I wonder if this is going to be one of those giant unforced errors in history, kind of like giving every child access to social media and the teens. It had major cognitive impairment, and we're seeing all the study on that and the data on that. And I know these students are a little bit older. I mean, they're young adults, but the reality of it is it looks like there's a lot of challenges in this. And I think there's a question about what the AI economy is actually going to require for workers, this year, let alone in 3 to 5 years. I mean, we are way overdriving our headlights right now. We have no idea if that's a cliff in front of us, a curve in front of us, and we're predicting all these things. We're saying in some cases, your car is going to turn into a dragon and take flight when we reach that cliff. And the other side is, nah, it's a whole bunch of crap, and we're just going to go right off that cliff and down to the rocks below. And I think none of us really know. I think, preparing yourself to use these tools, but I've already seen it, and I've got an episode coming up on The Buck Stops Here about cognitive decline and burnout. And I think a lot of those things are real challenges in AI. I'm already seeing it with clients I do consulting with, whereas before they would try to write up that response to an email or something on their own. Now they're almost incapable of acting unless they can drop that email into AI and get that second opinion from the sycophantic system.
What you're physically doing is removing, you're separating generating language with your thought process, and you're creating a scenario where if you're engaging, you're only engaging to get a better response to solve the problem, at least with the LLMs, at least with the language models.
So this takes us to the very next thing we want to talk about. A massive article, an article was published based on a massive survey that was done of 370,000 college essays. And the article's entitled, What 370,000 College Essays Tell Us About AI's Effects on Creativity. So basically, what it reveals in this study is that while tools like ChatGPT give students better vocabulary and smoother transitions, they severely constrict creative thinking. Human written essays contained up to 8 times more novel ideas. AI tends to pull unique, unconventional, and neurodivergent thinking towards the mean, replacing all the human work of brainstorming with homogenized predictive text. That's actually what the article said. So what it's coming down to is this regression towards the mean, is this bell curve. The thing that makes your stuff very interesting when you write an article or a novel or a book is probably not the average middle. It's like sitting down and watching a TV show and saying, man, I could have written this. You know, you expect there to be a twist, right? If you can guess the twist, you're probably not doing the assignment correctly. They did another study on this that I remember reading about a few months ago, and they'd taken, I think, 2,100 college essays written before students had access to AI, like from 2021, versus what they're writing now. And I think it was even more than this. It wasn't 8 times. I want to say the factor was like 100 times more unique ideas. Like in the college essays, I think of the 2,100 essays, 800 or 900 of them had unique ideas, unique identifiable ideas. And in the essays written with AI's help, it was like 10 or 12 ideas, or 10 or 16. It was like in the teens.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's not 8 times. It's hundreds of times. So I think one of the big challenges for a lot of these students getting out of school, and everyone else, is to not get lazy with it. We need to be using it to replace the tasks that you don't need them. You don't need creative thinking. You don't need to really challenge yourself. Sometimes the journey is part of it. The reason you struggle with the text is because the learning happens in the journey. It's not just the answer. I've heard the calculator argument a lot. Like, these are just calculators, Dave. You know, we don't have people memorize math tables now.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to step in real quick here. Let me tell you what, calculators do a really awesome job. I was one of those. I was like, I don't need to learn math. I'll always have a calculator, lols. But here's the thing. Creativity and coming up with different ways of achieving the same, the saying, there's 10 ways to skin a cat or whatever like that. It's like multiple ways to doing it. If you're just going to outsource your thinking to this machine, you are going to sound like everybody else. I mean, if you don't put any kind of your own creativity from your industry or your knowledge or your experiences or your philosophies on life or anything that comes from you, of course you're gonna sound like everybody else, because it's scraped all of the internet's information and it's trying to give everybody the most common answer. So business owners, these are pitfalls for you guys. It might make you feel like you're doing something you didn't think you could do on your own, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's connecting with your audience, that it's up to your brand standards, that it's solving any novel problems that your industry is experiencing.
The one thing I want to caution people against, and I use AI not in everything, but in a lot of things every day, there's a piece of it that I can use with AI. I will eat my own dog food. I have tried these things, and I know a lot of things that work, some things it's made better, and some things it's made a lot worse. One of the things that really is bothering me right now is that I've heard people say, use it to help with brainstorming. Absolutely not. Brainstorm on your own first. Still spend the 15 minutes that you would do, and then you put that into the machine and you use that. It's the same way we used to do as a creative agency. We used to do brainstorming. And the problem with doing it in the room with everybody else is you don't get the unique items. You don't get the things that really make it interesting. The Got Milk campaign supposedly came out of really outlier type material. Like, some of the best advertising strategies in history are about challenging yourself and doing something that's not just up the middle. If it's an up the middle thing, then you don't need an agency to do it. So my thought on it is I understand people saying, like, use it to help with brainstorming. No, spend the 10 or 15 minutes doing the heavy labor, at least initially, of doing brainstorming, and then put that into your machine. Use it as a way to build out counterfactuals or to build upon your ideas, because you're going to be seeding that machine with a lot of stuff that's not in that average bell curve from the audience.
It is worth noting brainstorming is difficult. It is challenging, and it feels challenging. Therefore, it feels hard, and therefore, it feels like you're not good at it. I'm going to remove all of those excuses from your brain. If you are listening to this podcast, congratulations. Everybody is now creative. It is work. There are some specific processes that you can do. There are a few exercises that you can put yourself or your team through in fun ways, like really enjoyable, fun ways to work through some of those creative challenges, those creative blocks. Just because it feels difficult and it's hard does not mean it is not worth pursuing, and it does not mean that you are not good at it.
So basically, how I'm seeing it here is the human piece, that human cognitive element, that heavy lifting still needs to be done by a human if you want the best results. And that brings us to the fifth article we have today. Virginia, would you introduce that to us?
I would love to. Our fifth article is around the ultimate moral imperative. This is the article is from the New York Times and was posted May 26th, titled "To Understand Pope Leo's Efforts on AI, Look at the Man Shaking His Hand." In the article, Pope Leo XIV is set to publish his first encyclical. Just a quick shout out for Pope. He's from Chicago. This is our own United States Pope. And he's making some waves. He seems to be a lot more vocal than previous popes in our lifetimes have been. And what a day to have the stage. In his first encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, he addresses artificial intelligence and human dignity. In a historic first, the Pope will share the Vatican stage with Anthropic co-founder Christopher Olah. The document addresses deep moral concerns, from autonomous AI weapons and drones to the hollowing out of human-centric professions like nursing and teaching, and demanding that the technology be directed towards the common good. Regardless of how you guys feel about the Pope, it is quite refreshing to see the guy kind of line up his actions with what the position is supposed to represent. And it's pretty cool to see the guy stepping up and kind of saying, hey, while this technology is amazing and we can pursue it, we should do so to the common good of all of the humans on the planet. And that's definitely a different narrative than we're hearing from a lot of other places these days.
We will link to the entire encyclical in the show notes. I have actually read through it at this point. As of last week, I was only about through 10,000 words of it. I think it's like 40,000 words. It's a pretty good read, and I think it's a good take on things. And the subtitle of it is "On Safeguarding the Human Person in the Time of Artificial Intelligence." And I think it's a very important document. I heard somebody last week saying, like, how did they get, this is the best branding marketing for Anthropic at all, because
we got the Pope.
Well, the article from the New York Times is actually entitled "To Understand Pope Leo's Efforts on AI, Look at the Man Shaking His Hand." He's one of the co-founders of Anthropic. He's definitely talking to Anthropic about it. It's a big question right now. And I think what we really do need to think about, especially when the negatives on AI are so high. You know, we have people protesting data centers. And I hate this, because data centers are going to happen whether we like them or not. There's a way we as humans need to be involved, and we need to be taking charge of how these things are getting presented in our communities. We need to be involved, and we need to be speaking truth to power and letting them know what we think is allowable and not. If we're trying to replace humans with machines, what's the point in humans? And I think for every business owner out there right now, you need to think long and hard about keeping humans at the center of all you do. I think there's going to be a big backlash coming for people. I joked about it in my thing last week about that, the pitchforks and torches are going to come out. The reality of it is that I work at AI, and I think it's important that we need to understand that any technology comes with a set of criteria on how you can use it responsibly. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. Most of you out there right now who are not getting a positive return on investment in your AI are not using it responsibly. If you're using anything responsibly in your company, you should be getting a positive return on investment. And I think the challenge with it is is we just thought it was great. We could replace people with it, fire them wholesale, and see the stock go up. At the end of the day, it is an incredibly powerful technology. But I think with any great power also comes great responsibility. Thank you, Stanley. And I think it's important for all of us to think about what we're doing out there. I think the Pope's encyclical is on point. I think it's a good read for people to at least think about this technology in a deep manner that we are getting lip service to from Silicon Valley. And by the way, I'm not trying to make this a soapbox. This episode is supposed to be pro technology, but I think more importantly, I think because we deal with small and medium businesses every day, we want this to be pro human. And we think the best way to implement this technology is a way to maximize the output, the capability, and the freedom of every person in your organization to make your industry better, to make what you do every day is better. But use the people to their best end and their best agency, the things they are best at, and helping your company achieve its goals. So that is what I think is going on there. That's what I took away from reading the encyclical. I think that any company, for business owners, you need to make sure that AI deployment is a reflection of your core company values. At the end of the day, it should reflect what you're doing in your business. The Pope's right. You should be prioritizing human dignity and genuine care over pure, ruthless efficiency. And I think that in the long run, your long-term success depends on keeping human beings at the center of what you're trying to do. At the same time, responsibly moving into these new technologies to unlock the capability of your organizations in ways you think will work best for that organization and the people who are part of it.
Some of your takeaways for that, business owners, it can be as simple as if you're using AI to help empower your employees, to help train them on skill sets that are going to be up and coming, or soft skill sets that maybe could help them excel in their current role, you're going to be building loyalty within your brand. If you use AI to treat your employees or your customers just like numbers or algorithms, you will inevitably erode your brand's reputation. As long as we're still humans purchasing these goods and services, it's huge selling to. Opportunities exist, but you got to weigh it against how you want to be, how you want to intentionally build your brand to be, and how that lines up with your brand's core values. That is always a great filter to run those decisions up against. Should we be doing it this way or this way? I don't know. How does that reflect within our brand? How does that reflect within our brand's values? And there's some of your answers.
I think if there's a lot to digest this week, and we hope to be bringing these to you every week moving on. Sometimes we'll have to leave town. We're trying to figure out how to do these things remotely, but there was a lot to digest this week. But if there's one single unifying thread running through all of this, is that AI is forcing us to figure out what it actually means to be human and what it means to run a human business in 2026.
Absolutely. And I know there is so much pressure there to adopt these tools, and it applies on a lot of different levels, your personal, career, economic, regional, global. And there is a relentless speed that these advances add to that pressure. And at the center of it all, here's us, our little organic human beings, trying not to, blindly adopt these tools just because of market pressure, just because you're told to do it. I think it's important to be very intentional with these choices and decisions and options. And we have to protect our creative thinkers, and we have to keep human dignity at the forefront. And that's a really powerful little phrase, human dignity. If you've never sat with what that is to you, I invite you to grab 10 minutes of quiet and just ponder what is human dignity, and how do we keep it at the forefront of our business models. I think transparency is huge, and it's often missing. And we're going to have to kind of step that up in some of our national conversations, but also at very, very local levels. So
there is a lot there. Make no mistake, we're a pro technology, but a pro human podcast. We think that all business owners are going to be struggling with this. And if you have not run into it in your business yet, because most of the businesses out there have not implemented AI in any real measurable way where it's really making a difference to the bottom line yet. Even though 68% of small and medium businesses are starting to use AI in some part of their operations, we're not seeing the sea change on how this is going to take, how long it's going to take to implement that in your business. But we think these are important questions to think about as you move forward in it. And if you'd like to have a conversation with us deeply, you can leave us a comment on on YouTube or reach out to us at AI the podcast. We'd love to hear from you and see if we can maybe engage you or answer one of your questions live on air in a later episode. So that's it for us today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of AI the podcast. If you found today's breakdown helpful for your business, please take a second to smash that like button, subscribe to this feed, share this episode with another business owner who's trying to navigate this landscape. It makes a huge difference for us, and it helps bring more people into this vital conversation. So until next time, stay curious, stay human, and keep looking ahead. I'm David Maples.
And I'm Virginia Huling.
Take care.
That's a wrap for this episode of AI the Podcast. To make sure you never miss an update on the future of tech and business, hit that like and subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. This show is made possible by the support of listeners like you. So if you want to help us grow this community, drop us a 5-star rating. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.